Welcome back, my nomads. Welcome back to another Bitcast. I got Zach Payton here with me again. What's up, Zach?
Hey, how you doing, brother?
Doing good, doing good. Before we start, I got one question to ask you. Are you watching Loki?
Yes.
What do you think?
I like it so far. Out of all of the Marvel series, I like it the most.
Yeah. One thing about Loki is I feel like it's going to connect so much. Like, WandaVision was dope. Falcon and Winter Soldier was dope.
Right.
But you could kind of keep them separate. I feel like Loki is just intertwining everything.
Right.
With the movies, the shows, the whole universe, a whole universe that we haven't even seen, with all these characters and all these concepts. And we've watched 3 episodes apiece, so it's like I feel like this the show is giving you so much, but it's still giving you so little, because it could go either way. Like, who's Sylvie? What's Loki trying to do? Is the big bad another Loki variant, or are the timekeepers even real? Or it could go in either way, and I'm loving it because of that.
Right.
Some of my favorite parts are just Loki and Mobius just sitting there talking about existentialism.
Yeah.
I
Right.
love it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Those conversations are awesome.
The and see that's kind of like what makes a good show, right? It's not so much the plot. Like, plot's part of it, but it's the interactions between the characters that kind of create that you get an idea who they are based on how just them talking. You know what I mean?
That's very true, because if you look at Avatar, that the movie Avatar, James Cameron's Avatar, it was so popular and it did so well. But if you look at the plot, it's pretty basic.
Simple.
From A to B.
Right.
It's like a simple destiny story. It's a simple environmental story. Exactly, but what people love is the visuals, the characters themselves, how they interact, and same thing with Loki, man. It's I was watching Fat Man Beyond, and Mark Menardo was talking about how this show was just an updated Demolition Man, where it's like a guy out of time is brought to chase another guy out of time. So like, yeah, that kind of is true.
Right.
And
all
I
of
like
them are
how
kind of at a time too. You know what I mean? The whole TWA thing. I mean, they're not. They just confirmed that they are just normal people, which are taken for whichever unknown reason. You know what I mean? And
yeah, that was a big ball drop like 10 minutes before the end of the 3rd episode. Like, hey, turns out these people are just people. It's like, what?
Right, exactly. And they just live forever because they're not in any kind of conceptualized time type of thing. Because they go back and forth all the time. And I mean, the first episode showed, like, I mean, the good thing I like about this show is that they made the last phase like, all right, it's over and done with. The Infinity Stones are absolutely meaningless. We have dozens of these things everywhere. They mean nothing.
Gosh.
So, which means that even though with Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet is big and he's creating havoc with the universe, he's part of what was the acceptable, what was supposed to happen. You know what I mean? He wasn't completely something that wasn't, all right, he has to be stopped by literally every living entity in the universe. That's not true, because this organization treated as such, because they made it clear where anytime there's something that goes away from what's acceptable according to the Time Lords anyway, or their idea of the Time Lords, if they happen to be not real, they interfere and they prevent it from happening. So right there, that just means that whoever the next villain is for the next, you know, when the whole band gets back together again, if they want to do like another Avengers type of thing, this guy's got to supersede space and time. Then, you know what I mean? He's got to be beyond the stone,
which makes sense. Which makes the King, the Conqueror rumors. It makes more sense that he would be the next big.
Yes, because
big
he
bad.
goes around in time and he interferes with everything, and he creates all these problems in the time, and you know, and then you start having all these Marvel characters fight the evil versions of themselves or other variations of themselves. But remember, every time Kang does that, he starts having more problems with himself. Like he deteriorates. Like he has, you know what I mean? So he can't handle this either. So there's, like you said, Loki's good because, I mean, the thing with WandaVision and Winter Soldier, that's a one-dimensional thing because WandaVision is all about themselves, right? It's just about them two, ultimately, about their love and all that. And it's how they get away from all that stuff. And Winter Soldier and Captain America now, that's a earthly mortal thing. That's just about humans and stuff, right? Like, but when you have Loki involved, like you said, it ties space and sorcery
magic,
and all that stuff all into one thing, and now you got the whole universe you can account for. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man, it's amazing. I love it.
And that's the reason why, because Loki's like, out of the whole show, they do a really good job, like we were talking about, how they flesh out these characters so well because the interactions between characters. And you know, Avatar did that really well. But you think of it, a lot of really good movies, right? Like look at Lord of the Rings, right? Even though Lord of the Rings, very simplistic story, very well written book, but the movies follow the books where you figured out the characters based on how they survived and interacted with each other. Like Legolas is a pretty boring guy. But his interaction with Gimli, with the fact that they had this competition the whole time,
this little game between them while they're fighting,
that created like a part of the character you wouldn't have gotten otherwise. You know
exactly.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And to me, it reminds me of like, you know, a lot of games and stuff kind of do that now with like these overarching RPGs and stuff. Like Mass Effect is a great example. I mean, you kind of give Mass Effect as like, this is like the game that everyone wants to copy off of when it comes to this stuff. Because the story itself is very simple. You got sentient, you know, AI machine who was created by an apex race from millions of years ago, thinking that the only way you can control things is control, you know, organics is by having some kind of AI that knows better than themselves. And it creates this whole problem. But
like I mean, the Terminator, the Matrix, you know.
How many movies and stories have been based on that? Too many to tell. But you know what? It shines. It's when Shepard has his interactions with Garrus. Right, iRobot has his interactions with Garrus, and you know and if you want to pursue romantic type of things with like, you know, whoever, like you know what I mean. And each character has their own thing. Like Ashley is a xenophobic soldier. Tiden's kind of like by the book kind of guy who thinks more logically instead of emotionally. And you kind of think the only way you can figure that out though is by talking to them. That's and you know what I mean. And that's what makes the game really, really good, because the combat in the first game is kind of
It's bad.
But the second one, they figured out the combat a lot better. But at that point, it's still, you have 15 characters you can play with. You know what I mean? And then out of these 15 people that are on your ship, or how many there are, you talk to all of them, and they each have their own stories and stuff. And a lot of games are really going in that direction.
The more,
you know what I mean?
Cinematic direction.
Yes.
It's like, for the longest time, movies were the standard. Were put on the pedestal. Now we're in an information age where now long format is the way to go. So like TV shows and now video games are becoming so cinematic.
Right.
That now movies are trying to be like the TV shows and the games and vice versa. But like these video games. It used to be.
Big actors do shows now. Like you have big time
I was just about to say that, man.
Who said for the longest time, I'm never going to do TV. And you're like, oh crap, TV is like where it's at. And you have this with games too. Like you have certain companies who have the money to get people to do these voices. And you're like, I mean, think of it. Martin Sheen is a very acclaimed actor, and he's in Mass Effect.
Yes.
And that game is 11 years old. You know what I mean?
I love the Elusive Man. I love that character, man.
Me too. And you don't know a whole lot about this guy at all. You know what I mean? The only way you figure things out about him is stuff that was already made after the fact, just to build his character. But you didn't need to know a whole lot about him to know what kind of person he is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you just talk
And
to him, and then the whole legend of the elusive man throughout the games.
yeah,
It
yeah,
was
yeah.
so well
No, it's
done.
perfect. Yeah, exactly. And you know, the thing is, you have games that try to do this, but it doesn't really work out too well. Another example that I think is pretty good is Star Wars Fallen Order. I don't know if you've ever finished that.
I haven't finished
So
it.
this, so the whole gist is, for people who don't know, is that this kid named Cal Kestis who survives Order 66 as a Padawan, he sees his master get killed in front of him on this Jedi cruiser, and his whole thing is that he escapes right with his master's lightsaber while his master takes like 100 shots to his body so he can put him into an escape pod, and he survives. And then he when he's a teenager and he runs away from the Empire because they find out he's force sensitive, he gets saved by someone who was a former Jedi Master who turned herself quiet from the Force, so she doesn't use it anymore. And she has he gains parties along the way, but they have really good conversations, and you can tell just based on how the camera is when they have conversations. Like there's actual emotion when they're talking about this stuff. Like anytime Cal has a memory about something when he was doing training with his master, and then he learns a new power, he has some kind of teaching that he remembers from what his master has taught him. Even though his master was brutal with him, like there was definitely some kind of like fatherly type of mentorship relationship there, and then it kind of conveyed itself with the new character. And that's just a relatively new thing, because you look at games from like the 90s and the early 2000s and stuff, like that wasn't really a thing. You know what I mean? Like
No, it was like a mission list, and then you
exactly
just
that's it.
click on it.
You know what I mean? Exactly.
Maybe one little cutscene that's like a minute.
Right.
It's like, oh, I'm in this new place. Oh, there's an enemy. Let's fight.
Right. But now you feel emotion from some of these characters, and it helps because now games are made in such a way that it looks ultra realistic to where it's no different than CGI in a movie. You know what I mean?
Nope.
And now you can convey how characters feel based on you have every micro reaction in their face. Like and the thing is, you don't have to do a whole lot of acting because you can just make it to where it seems like it's gripping. Like when the thing that hits me the most was, the thing is with Star Wars as a whole, and especially in the prequels, there should be moments that you're like, oh man, like just makes your heart drop. But they do so bad at executing it that you don't, you're like when Obi-Wan and Yoda are in the temple and they find out that kids were killed by Anakin, you would think there would be, I don't know, a different reaction other than that. You're like, dang, the guy who was pretty much my brother just killed like 100 kids.
Yes.
And I'm just like, I call them younglings. I cover my face and that's it. Like, that's all you get.
There's a story behind that. The story is that Ewan McGregor thought the line was so ridiculous, he couldn't stop laughing, so he just covered his mouth when he said it.
Well, Ewan McGregor's a good actor, so I excuse him. I know it's not him. The fact that was never him, but the point remains the same, right? But this game, when it recounts the part where he is a preteen or a teenager running away to when Order 66 is called, like it's got the music, it's got the ambiance and all that stuff, right? Like, and the troopers that he was so close to because they were on the ship for years at a time.
Oh, yeah, true.
He had personal relationships with them, like they're people at the end of the day, right? And all of a sudden, they're shooting at him, and they're shooting at everyone that he cares about. Yeah. And then he, and while he's running through the hallways and all this other stuff, and then it's got that music, like when Anakin turned and started killing the people, it's like that right there. It's like, oh my God, like this is like absolutely devastating, and I can't believe it took a game to actually punch that point home compared to what the movies did. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I was like, because that right there, that should really captivate people to where I was like, a lot of people died. And it wasn't hammered home enough about how much of a big deal that is. Like when you have mass genocide on that level, from evil, like you need to hit that. Instead, it was kind of just glossed over.
Yeah, to your point, in the movie, episode 3, it was like, he killed younglings. All right, where's your husband? I want to find. Like, it just moved on to the next thing.
It moved on. It's like, where's your husband? It's like, well, why? And first off, they're married.
Then the story just moves on.
Just like her reaction to all of this is like, first off, all right, if someone came to me that my spouse was just killed thousands of people, literally across
including
the way
kids.
that I could see, including kids, I'm not going to be saying like, oh, what do you mean like that? What do you mean like that is when you say something ridiculous, like something stupid. You know what I mean? Not something outlandish and something that could potentially be true. You know, like you're going to be upset and you're going to find a way to defend him. And there was none of that. You know what I mean? But that's besides the point. But the whole point is like you have video games who are bringing that home instead of actual movies, and it should, you know, and that just goes to show how much games have progressed in the last 10, 15 years compared to in TV shows, but games in particular than movies.
I mean, even the games of like the early mid 2000s, they started to progress, because I don't know if you remember the game Star Wars Battlefront 2 for the PS2 and the Xbox.
Yeah, of course.
If you play the campaign of when the 501st are transitioning to the good old soldiers to the Order 66 guys, it's like, man, I think in Clone Wars, the show, it's shown that the clones have chips in their heads and they can't control the Order, but some clones were aware. And the 501st in the video game, it might have been retconned by now, but in the video game, they knew, they were aware. It was like, oh, we love fighting besides besides the Jedi, they're good warriors, but one day we're going to kill them. Like, it was just the progression and how, like, the dialogue and them talking about through each mission, it was kind of like telling a story, and it was kind of like jarring to hear.
Right.
Like, they knew that they were always going to betray the Jedi, and then they find out, oh, Anakin's on our side, so we're going to fight alongside him against the Jedi threat. Like, they call them terrorists and stuff like that.
Well, that makes sense.
Amazing.
I mean, I get that, but at least make Anakin a tailored character then. Someone that's, like, so tantalizing. Someone that's, like, so gripping that he's like, you know what? You don't need to have this chip to convince him. I'm telling you because you've been fighting with me for 3 years and you trust what I have to say over them. You know what I mean? There's an emotional connection there. And I don't know if you watched The Bad Batch or not. The Bad Batch touches on that quite nicely as well.
I haven't checked it out yet.
Oh, well, I'm not going to get involved in that so much, but they were the ones in Clone Wars that were like that special forces group who had their own genetic
defects.
Their defects,
which made them more individualistic.
Right, but their defects has prevented them from their chips from working. That was the whole point, and they were aware of their chips. That's the thing. You know what I mean?
Snap, for real.
Yeah, that's the whole point. So when Rex and Echo figured out that they had chips in their heads, they had theirs removed. You know what I mean?
I remember that.
Clone Wars. So yeah, but it's like
these video games now are so cinematic. I don't know if you played God of War.
Yeah, that's different though. That's like John Wick type of choreography.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes, and you touched on a point earlier, like how the facial expressions of, like, now technology is, we can see the expressions on the video game characters. There's some games now, like Splinter Cell Blacklist that came out, what's it called, God of War, who use real actors and they have the camera on their faces to capture their whole performance. And you could feel it, like you could just, it really immerses you in the game, as opposed to some games like Mass Effect. Now I understand why Mass Effect went for the programmed facial expressions, because you're playing an RPG that's so vast, and then your character has so many choices that you can do. You can't tell somebody to act out all that stuff. You just gotta pre-program. That's why when you're talking to somebody in Mass Effect, they're talking like this, and they're going through their preset motions and just talking like that.
That might change this new one though, because
oh, you think?
Well, I mean, think about it. Like the hardware that's in the new systems now, like they're able to run all that. You know what I mean?
Not to
And
mention AI nowadays has like
100%, they can
pre-programmed
do that for
emotion.
them.
Yeah.
Exactly. The AI can make that stuff for you now. You know what I mean? Like you don't even have to worry about that.
Yeah.
And I think because Andromeda was such a cluster, the last thing they want is to have that. And the thing is, it's a good thing that Andromeda was not part of the original Mass Effect characters list, because if you're just going to completely destroy those characters, yeah, at least destroy new ones. That's fine, because then you
Right.
can just like never talk about them again. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, so if they're going to do that with the new one, they're going to have to be really careful, because those characters are held sacred with that, with that fan base.
Oh, for
Me,
sure.
me in particular, because here's the thing, right? Because I showed you that trailer. Like that trailer had Liara looking for Shepard, obviously, in some kind of capacity, and it's like, okay, so that right off the bat told me that certain things from the third game are now canon. The Reapers are destroyed, right? And they have a love interest.
Yes. Yes. She was
Because
the best romance in all those games anyway.
Well, yeah, it makes sense. Like you said, she's in all three games. Even if she wasn't in the second one, she was in the DLC second one for the romance. You know what I mean? And it just feels like all the other characters you could have picked to have a romance with just didn't feel natural. You know?
Yeah.
And it's just like, all right, so if you have a relationship with Tali, who is in a helmet that you can't even see her face,
That's not going to translate good in like a movie or something. Like
right?
it barely translated good in the game because Mass Effect is always trying to be cinematic. But it was because she was so cute and playful, people liked her. It was popular. But if you really want to get like real good emotion and a real
I didn't like her too
romance story, she has a fan base. She has a big fan base for that romance.
I know she has a huge fan base. Like when the new games came out, like she was one of the most popular characters that was in the party all the time. Yeah. I rarely used her. So it's funny because in the 360 version, I always had Ashley die. But this time around, I was kind of curious to see how it would be in all of them, how it would be if she survived. Now, I didn't realize how much your decisions were, really impacted things until I started watching them on YouTube. Like, so if you had a relationship with Ashley in the first game, and if you cheated on her in the second, and you got back with her in the third, or if you didn't get back with her in the third, and then if you start, and at that moment when the Citadel was attacked by Cerberus, and she's defending what's left of the console, like you can't convince her to turn the gun on Eugenia. Like you have to shoot her. And I always forgot, like, because I always wanted to do a playthrough. It's like, all right, you know what? I'm not going to see her in the hospital because I just want to get to that point to see what that interaction was. That interaction was straight up hateful. You know what I mean?
She was always kind of a rough around the edge character who was. I just wanted her to stop talking half the time.
Yeah, it seemed too forced that they made a character like that. Because for me, it's like when you have a character who's like that, which is a possible romance type of thing, just from a guy's perspective, the last thing you want is to have a girl start talking to you like that.
Unless you're a masochist.
Yeah, and I'm like, well, it doesn't, you know what I mean? Just
yeah, she does talk mad crazy.
I'm just like, what the heck are you talking about? Like, this is nuts. You know what I mean?
Like I would be sitting there like talking to Ashley just so I can get the trophies on the game, and then I'd be like, I gotta go, and just walk away. I would love the way he ends the conversations with her.
Yeah, I'm just like, what's this? And so I'm like, you know what? I'm never doing that again, because I don't know if you ever did the DLC for the Citadel for the third game, where it's like the shore leave and everything.
Yes, but that was a while ago. I don't remember.
Yeah,
that.
So if you do the shore leave, but the thing is that if you had a relationship with Ashley, like there is some different things about it in that one. But out of the whole entire series, my three favorite characters that I like talking to the most, where it's like, okay, obviously it's Garrus.
Yes, Garrus.
Garrus as your best friend, like that's the guy.
That's
you know what I mean?
That's my dude, man.
I also
take him on every mission. Everyone.
Prince Jr.'s character in the third game.
He's dope.
James Vega, perfect.
Dope.
Absolutely great, because he's just that typical guy from LA who's just stupid, superstitious, and Catholic, and it's just like, okay, I know so many people like this. It's funny because I got a lot of friends like that, and it's just like absolutely hilarious to me, right? And then, believe it or not, I like Thane. Thane
is my guy. I love his character. I love how he relives events in real time. That's such a crazy story concept, and it would play perfect in a movie.
Oh, 100%.
And we know the movie's coming out, so
yeah. I mean, look, there's no way
bring
around
Thane
it.
in.
Henry Cavill didn't do a good enough job to blur out that script, unless he did it on purpose so people can actually read out stuff. Because I was going to the next level on this, I was like, wait a minute.
Oh, I got a question for you about that. Do you think he plays Shepard or someone else? He kind of looks like Kaiden.
He's not going to play Kaiden, because a guy like that,
he's too big,
who plays Superman, is not going to play the guy who could possibly get killed. I'll tell you that right now.
Well, what about Saren?
You know who would be a really good Saren, because you're going to have to make him CGI anyway? You need to have Jeremy Irons.
Jeremy Irons?
Just for the voice.
True.
Just think of it.
True.
Scar, right? Scar. Just think of it. You know what I mean? Like, you need to have a guy whose voice just sounds so sinister anytime he talks. Him or Ron Perlman. If Ron Perlman does it, I'd be happy too.
Ron Perlman. I didn't even think of that. Ooh, I'm a big Ron Perlman fan, man. He's so underrated.
I know he is. He's such a great actor, and he's classically trained, and it shows even in the stuff that he does that's simple, right? But the thing is like, the sad part is there's only so many games that are like Mass Effect with that, I haven't really played too many. The Last of Us. I know a lot of people have talked about how that's like that.
So
too.
cinematic, man. So
Uncharted's like that.
Uncharted, God of War, Ghost of Tsushima. I don't know if you played that.
I have not.
It's
Dark Souls.
amazing.
I have. Now, Dark Souls is kind of like that, because I don't know if you've ever really played the last one or not. That game just.
No, I don't. I try to have fun when I play games, so.
I don't think I've ever cussed so many times in my life playing a game. And I know it's meant for you to die. I get that. You know what I mean? But you're like at a point where it's like there's like a certain rhythm that you have, and then you just die. It just irritates me. You know what I mean? But like how that's made, because like you see the environment in a game like that, like it's like, man, they spent a large amount of time like setting this up just to be made like that. You know what I mean?
I feel that way when I played God of War. I felt that way when I played Mass Effect. Now, the Mass Effect games, they reused a lot of environments and models, but when you see how much time is into those textures, the scripted dialogue,
right?
Because
that's what they spent their time on. That was a dialogue piece.
Yeah, because before their games were just the sentence, and you would pick the sentence, and then the character. Yeah, the character would.
You always get the same kind of response type of thing.
Yeah, Dragon Age and stuff.
Dragon Age is okay. Dragon Age is kind of like a light version of Mass Effect when it comes into conversations. You know
Mass Effect Light.
Yeah, Mass Effect Light. That's what it reminds me of. But Dragon Age story is way better.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I just want to go on record and say, for the Mass Effect movie, they need to call James Spader so he can play Saren.
I know. When you said that was a good choice. That was a good choice, but I'm kind of stuck between Irons or Perlman. I'm telling you right now.
Irons or Perlman? Yeah, that's true, man.
No, because James Spader would probably be better playing the Turian council member, personally.
But when you got James Spader, man, he gotta be in a big part. The councilman, well, I barely talk to the councilman. I don't know if he's in more stuff, but I didn't go back to the Citadel. Once I was going, I was out.
You know who James Spader should play? If they ever make a second one, he needs to be Legion.
Oh yeah, Legion.
He
That
would be
was one of
better
my
for
top
Legion.
characters too. And
I liked him as a lot,
third
even
one.
though you got him at the end. I liked him a lot as
Yeah,
like
he was
a.
so good, man.
Well, it's weird because we associate Legion as a he, even though it's gas and they're neutral.
Oh yeah, they're neutral. Yeah.
But it's no, I mean, to me the second one's still my favorite. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
hands down,
And
the best
Zaid's like my
stories and
favorite.
everything.
Like Zaid to me, like I started using him more and more, and just like what he would say, it's just absolutely hilarious to me. Like this guy is so off the wall.
I can't believe I played the second game like literally like 10 times and beat it 10 times, but I've never come across Zaid. Like I just
Well,
always
he was a
walked past.
DLC.
Yeah,
He
I
was a
could have
DLC.
swore I had all the DLCs, and then I was just playing the Legendary Edition. I was like, "Who's this guy over here?" Started talking to him. I was like, "Yo, I can recruit this guy. Who is this?" So I googled him. I'm like, "Yo, he's a DLC character." I could have swore I had all the DLCs because someone said Kasumi's a DLC character, right?
Yeah.
I could have swore she was just a regular character, so that means I had all the DLCs.
Right. You just walked past.
I just kept walking past
They
this
made
guy.
it. They made it. They made it pretty easy to talk to.
Yeah.
Right on Sega.
Yeah. And I could have swore I've seen him before standing there. I just always ran past him. So this one time I was like, let me talk to this guy for once. And I
Right.
talked to him. I was like, I could recruit this guy? Who is this guy? Because I
Right.
kept seeing Zaid. I'm like, who is Zaid?
Right.
What are you talking about?
Now another game that's kind of like this. Now I don't know if you ever played Final Fantasy 15. So that was the one that came out like 4 years ago or whatever, where it's like the free flowing combat. So it's beautiful. Like it's it's absolutely great.
Because I saw the movie that prequels to it. That movie's amazing.
The cutscenes for it, you can tell they spent a lot of time on those scenes and stuff. And the cool thing is, those cutscenes you can pretty much do in combat as well. Like you can zip around and do all that other stuff, right? And the interactions between, gosh, give me a second, Noctis and I'm going to forget the bad guy's name. I forget. It's been a long time since I played, but that interaction too, especially at the end when they're fighting each other and it was going all back and forth and everything, dude. Like it was, like you can tell. Well, Final Fantasy's always tried to have been very, cinematic at least.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So but
it's one of the
but
first leading pioneer games that really put cinema in the forefront.
But now, now it's like so many games are trying to do it. Now they may not necessarily succeed, but now they're trying to do it. And I think streaming has a big part to play with this because now production with movies that are not in the movie theater or TV shows having movie type of budgets and production quality is attributing to this.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and now you're having real artists write these type of games and these shows and stuff. You're like having big time people actually having some kind of say in this. You know what I mean?
They're having like legit composers scoring these video games and these TV shows. It's crazy, man.
Now, the only other game that I could put with Mass Effect in terms of character writing is The Witcher. The Witcher to me, especially the third one, like here's the thing with Geralt. He's supposed to be boring, but he's not. Everything about him is supposed to be boring, but he's not. It has nothing to do with how he does it, how he's just monotone, and he doesn't have some kind of emotional reactions like like a normal person does and all that. But it's the fact that he's got a lot of different people he knows and he's friends with, and it's just that alone was just his reactions. You're like,
yeah.
Every time, you know what I mean? Like Dandelion acts like a complete, asinine Nimrod, and he's like, you know what I mean? and it's like, and his love interest too. It's like he's got some very emotionally driven love interests, and he's just so flat, and it's great to me. You know what I mean? Like that's another game too. That's just and the books are very well written too. They're hard to follow, but they're very well written. And the show did a really good job portraying. I think the show did more on the game aspect than they did in the books. You know what I mean? Even though they
Which would
follow the
make
book-
sense because the books, like you said, are kind of hard to follow, and most people were introduced to them through the video games.
Yeah, the books are. I've read all the books. It's been a long time since I've read them, but I've read all of them, and I read the short stories too because the first series was the first 2 short stories for The Witcher. It wasn't even the first book or the games or any of that stuff because the books and the games kind of go in their own way. Like they're pretty much the same, but they're not split up the same because there's multiple books compared to 3 games. And
yes,
yeah, because there's 2 short stories and I think there's 4 books, 5 books, something like that. But no, that's another one too, and it's like, and the show shows that. Like the show is like, you're like, because I know that game took so long to make that they were using some very old school technology to make that. If they ever make another Witcher and it looks like anything what is capable of now, like I'll be the first one to buy it.
I mean, look at The Witcher 3 when it came out. It came out when these current gen consoles first came out, and it blew everybody's mind, technology-wise and gameplay-wise. Imagine that now.
Oh, I know.
Imagine them making it now, which they're probably doing. I mean, I don't know, because they just bombed Cyberpunk. I don't know. But we'll see. I mean, that's another thing, too. Like
Cyberpunk had such promise. You could tell. As promise. Like, look.
I got skeptical with all the hype of it, and then they hired
Keanu Reeves being in all the commercials. And all
like now video games are using like movie stars to sell their products. It's crazy now. Like look at Call of Duty, the Call of Duty franchise. It's like a who's who in each game of who's hot now. Let's get them. Let's hire them.
Yeah, but look.
Conor McGregor was in one. It's crazy.
I mean, look how much money they have. Activision and CD Projekt Red. Like CD Projekt Red is worth billions of dollars. Like billions. I mean, they lost a lot because of Cyberpunk. They've lost like $3 or $4 billion, and they're still worth, multi-billion dollars. You know what I mean? Like that goes to show how big they are. Well, they're a multimedia company. They're not just the whole video game thing. They have a lot of other things, but the video game thing is like their main stuff because they're huge in Eastern Europe, right?
Yeah, they are.
And they have they have exclusive rights to The Witcher, like exclusive rights.
So that means they're getting money from the show.
Yes, they helped produce the show. The guy who originally wrote the books,
I know he was part of the show.
Projekt Red for a while, and then they got some kind of legal tiff, and then they worked it out because it was beneficial for both of them to work it out. Obviously.
Yeah, like Sony and Marvel with Spider-Man.
Or it's like AT&T and drawing the blank of the guy who wrote Game of Thrones.
George R.R. Martin.
Yes, thank you. And him and Martin. Martin's the same thing with Game of Thrones. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I mean, that's another franchise too. Like these are their money makers. That's for them. It's The Witcher, and it's going to make them a lot of money because look, The Witcher could have the potential to be the Game of Thrones of streaming. It really does. Because there's so much to it. You know what I mean? Yeah,
the history is so rich. They have so many different characters.
And it's already written. They don't have to wait for this guy to make more books.
I know. They don't have to wait 20 years for one book to come out.
Yeah, this guy's like taking the sweet time. He's like, well, I'm already rich and I'm living in my nice, lovely, huge mansion in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I don't need to do anything.
And don't get me wrong. Like, hey, if you're an artist and it takes you a while to put out your content, go ahead, but don't start a show that's going to keep building up to your current book when you still are like 3 books behind.
That's going to stress yourself out for no reason because now you're meeting deadlines, and that last season suffered because of it. Okay, that last season Game of Thrones was bad, and they cut so many corners.
I mean, the creators said it themselves. They, without the books, they didn't know what they were doing, so they were just putting stuff up, and it's the show suffered for it. I mean, people talk about how bad the last season was, but once the show got ahead of the books, it started to go downhill anyway. I mean, let's be honest. But we all still loved it because we loved the characters, and then it had
Jon Snow and Daenerys. As soon as
4-season legacy.
I'm like, why are they going there? Why are they doing it? made no sense to me. Like, you're doing shock and awe type of stuff now. All right, you're like, oh my god, they're related. Now they can do this. Like,
I
there is
mean,
no.
he told them where he was going to go with the books, and that was apparently canon for where he was going to go. So blame that on him. I mean, just like when people were trying to say Indiana Jones is a pedophile because he got with Karen when she was 15. Get at the writer George Lucas who wanted that to be part of the story. So,
well, yeah,
but we won't touch that.
No, there's lots of instances, even in our history alone, that we've had that problem. But that's besides the point. No, but exactly. The thing is with Martin though is that he got famous because those books weren't famous until the show. Once he got famous, he wanted to have more like in your face type of content.
Oh,
you know
really?
what I mean? I thought so. Like when like you said, when they needed more books, he's starting to get a lot more visceral, I guess is the best way to put it, with the content, with where the shows are going. Like that rape scene with Lannister and I forgot her name too. Jesus, it's been that long since I've
just like 20 characters. So
Jamie Lannister and the cousin that they're having a thing with, the queen, the queen mother. What's her name? The one with the short hair who they shamed and she was naked walking down.
Oh, the evil chick.
Yeah. Anyway,
I just know she was a Targaryen.
Yeah. Anyway, her they had a rape scene in like some in the middle of like this open room. I didn't know if there was like
in the show or in the book.
In the show, that was a rape scene, dude. I was like, this is going a little too far. You know what I mean? Plus, they're brother and sister anyway. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was I know some people who haven't watched that show for stuff like that, and it was crazy because I was like a fan of the show, and I started rewatching it last year during the quarantine. I was like, ooh, yeah, there's a lot of when you're watching it all together instead of one episode a week, you're kind of like,
right.
This is a problem. Like this,
right.
Scene after scene after episode after episode.
Much. It's too much, and that's why I like The Witcher, because The Witcher, like, even though it cross lines, like it's tasteful.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm thinking like it's just going to be more well done. And now the director said that they're not going to have that confusing way that they did in the first season, where it was going back and forth between.
Thank God.
I was losing. It's like the only way you can tell what they were doing is if you read the books and you understood the characters and where they're at in time.
Well, if you listen very closely to every single line of dialogue that they say, you can kind of follow it. That first season is not. A lot of people these days watch shows and TV while they're on their phone looking at other stuff. You can't do that with that first season. You gotta closely listen, because they'll hint at something. Oh yeah, I went to that castle. Wait, you went to that castle in that last episode. So that last episode means that it happened before this episode.
Right.
Chronologically. And then, okay. Like, you really gotta follow it. Like, sometimes I'll rewind, like, oh yeah. So this is ahead. And then it'll be, like, multiple timelines in one episode. So it was like, oh, okay. It's like, oh, she's the kid that he made the promise to, that he has to take care of. So this is a parallel timeline. Oh, okay.
No, that
was confusing.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And especially, I think with this past year and a half so far, people really wanted escapism. The games that had the best stories to tell, or the best characters, regardless of how simple their plot was, those are the ones that people latched onto. Like when you're reading a book, and you can tell a book's well written, is when you have some kind of emotional attachment to the characters that are being written.
Mm-hmm.
And same with the game. It's the same thing. It's a different type of medium for media, So at the same time, that's why people latch on to the Mass Effect characters or The Witcher or any of that other stuff, because they're well written.
Yeah.
You have an understanding of who they are. It's really simple. Like, even though you can choose about how Shepard's history was a little bit, and what kind of person he was going to be, or who she was going to be, or whatever it is, or any of those romances, all of those choices at the end of the day, it's just well written. You know what I mean? Like, that's the best
Very
part.
well written. Very
Yeah,
well.
and it's like, and it's crazy to me. It's like, we're talking about those Mass Effect characters. Not once did we talk about Seth Green.
He has to be in the movie. He has to be. I'm sorry.
There's a couple characters you can't replace, right?
Yeah.
He's one of them. Like, there's no way you can't have him and not be the pilot. You know what I mean?
Now, for whatever reason, if he can't be Joker, I know who could be. Andrew Santino, the comedian. He plays in the show Dave, Lil Dicky's show, as his manager, the redheaded guy.
Yo, he could be him. Bill Barr do it.
True. Well, he might be a little too old for that. Joker's a little younger. It depends where they're going with the story with Mass Effect. Technically, they could do Mass Effect after the 3 movies are over. I mean, after the 3 games are over. They could do that. Where Shepard's
because the script that was in Cavill's thing talked about Tali Zora going after. It was the first game, pretty much.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
on the Citadel and all that stuff.
That's one thing. It's like, can that be done with a gaming franchise such as Mass Effect? Mass Effect is so cinematic and so story driven that you carve your own story throughout the 3 games. So can you just go back and make a cinematic movie universe making these definitive decisions? Because for the most part, Shepard is kind of like a blank slate, and she has to be a blank slate so that the player can be who they want to be. Which is why Shepard comes off stale sometimes with their answer. Exactly. So I'm kind of like, I don't know if they could do that though. Because Henry Cavill, he's a big guy, but he's a big name. Like,
he's a big deal, absolutely.
Yeah,
like,
so
he's got 4 franchises he's working at once. Like, he's a big deal now. Like, as much as he's a private guy and he doesn't like that attention, like, that's not changing the fact that he's in a lot of things. You know.
So I'm wondering if they could have picked like a lesser name. Because Shepard's kind of like a blank slate.
Yeah, but Shepard's also the main guy. And if you're going to try to make this a big franchise, you need a big name. You can't have some no-name guy do this. Like, that's not that. Because here's the thing, right? You have some dude who's a no-name who's going to be playing on a big franchise that's already established. You can't do that. Now, if it was a first original piece, then that's a different story. But it's not. You know what I mean? You need to have a larger-in-life character because Shepard does larger-in-life things. And that's what the whole game is about with all that stuff. My main concern is this, right? The game's long if you do everything the right way. Which ones are you going to pick and choose in terms of which missions he does before he fights Saren? Which ones are most important? And which ones are you going to leave out? And how are you going to have continuity with that?
Yeah, you're going to have to take some characters out. Now, Mass Effect 1 is it doesn't have a lot of fat. It's pretty skinny compared to 2 and 3, story-wise. But
unless they're making... See, to me personally, they're better off not even making a movie, but doing a series.
Yes. I feel that...
But they haven't talked about that's a series or a movie yet. We're making assumptions it's a movie.
That's very true.
It would be a good idea. It's like when the reboot of Highlander is coming out, you know what I mean? They're like,
which he's a part of as well. I'm like, this guy's a part of so many franchises now. When he's going to have time to just sleep? He's part of Mass Effect.
No one even knew that he is engaged. Like, he's that private. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it's like, he's just that type of dude that lives in a very unassuming part in the United Kingdom. You know what I mean? But the thing is the thing is, it's like, this has to be a series. If you turn this into a movie, you're cutting way too many things to actually have the effect that you want.
Because how expensive is that movie going to be?
Exactly. It's got to be crazy expensive.
I mean, how expensive is that TV show going to be? Because the
It's
studio,
just as expensive as a movie.
because look at the Marvel shows. I think they said for Falcon and Winter Soldier, each episode was like around 20 mil.
Yeah,
Like
Mandalorian
before
was
that,
15.
it was
piece.
Game of Thrones took the cake for like
Yeah, well,
12, 15. Now it's 20 million. Not a lot of studios have that kind of money to put out per episode. And Mass Effect has special effects, has practical effects with aliens and CGI and armor and
yeah,
I
but
don't
the
know.
thing is, you don't have to spend all the money on the talent either. That's the thing. Henry Cavill might be the biggest person in that whole series.
Very true.
Series.
Very true. They
You know
might
what I mean?
they might lead off with him and then a bunch of like lesser known people. Especially if you're going to put all this makeup on them and turn them
You
into
can
aliens.
have a lot of the original people in the games who voice the aliens as the characters.
I don't think
You know
they'll
what I
do
mean?
that though. Studios really don't do that when they switch mediums because they want to make it distinct from the separate. I would personally love that if they just kept everybody. That would be awesome.
Well,
if Liara
say that
sounded like
with
Liara.
The Mandalorian and Clone Wars, they went from the cartoon to live action, and they did it and that was unheard of.
Well, you
And
got to
they did
remember,
that.
man, Disney takes a lot of risks with the stuff that they create. And because they have the money to fall back on to do that. They have parks and stuff like that.
We also don't know who's running the show in terms of production either.
Yeah, we don't even know the studio.
Yeah.
We don't know the
For all
studio.
we know, it could be Disney. You know what I mean?
I doubt it.
You'd be surprised. Why
I mean,
not?
Mass Effect is mature. Disney even edits their own stuff to put on the channel. Their older stuff.
They're open. They're leaving Deadpool intact.
I don't believe that until I see it.
I don't know, because Hugh Jackman, from my understanding, is more than open to be Wolverine again in a Deadpool movie. And on top of that, people are open to the fact that Deadpool is going to replace Stan Lee in all the cameos.
Okay, that would be awesome. That would be awesome.
No,
but
because here's the thing, Wade Wilson is a schizophrenic,
yeah.
right? And so and he breaks the fourth wall all the time. Maybe he imagines all this stuff. This whole thing is a story in his head. Maybe that's where it's going to go with it.
But so far,
you heard it first from me. If that ends up being the case, but no, what I'm
you
saying
heard it
is
first here on Nomader Bitcast.
But this could be AT&T. There's a lot of companies that do streaming that have a lot of money, a lot of money. You know what I mean? So it's not like finding. You're going to find the right people to get money for this type of stuff, because it's probably going to be like the first season where they're not going to take a whole bunch of risks. They want to see how it plays out. You know what I mean? Because for all we know, this could be an Amazon thing too. And Amazon's doing Lord of the Rings. And do you know how much they dropped on that show?
Billions.
They dropped billions of dollars on a TV show.
Billions. Okay? Just to buy the rights. Not even make it.
No,
they still got to make the thing.
They have to pay the people to write what they want first. It's Bezos has got so much money that it doesn't matter what he spends. He's figuring he doesn't even know what to spend it on. He's got almost $200 billion.
Nah.
He gave 35 of it to his ex-wife. He's like, I might as well spend it on going to space, drop it on Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Maybe it's Mass Effect next. Who knows? We have no idea. But if it is Mass Effect, at that point that budget is meaningless. Billions of dollars means nothing to this man. He can buy literally every movie studio and still have money left over. That's how much he has.
I just hope it's not NBC, so it doesn't get exclusively pitched to Peacock, because I don't have a membership. I doubt it though.
I don't think NBC would really do something like that.
No, they're known for Parks and Rec. They wouldn't do that. Parks and Rec, where everybody was like, let's make out. I'm like, these are adults. I loved Parks and Rec, but they seemed so kiddish in that show. Like, oh, let's go to the car and make out for an hour. What? You guys are adults. Who says make out?
Well, so I got a question for you. What other video game franchise do you think would be a suitable series or movie then? Because I feel like to me, if you're going to make a movie, it's got to be a one-off game. It can't be a huge franchise because then you're cutting too much content out at that point.
Yes, which is why I wasn't excited when they announced an Avatar: The Last Airbender show on Netflix. I was like, no, you're gonna have to cut out so much stuff if it's live action. Nah. But yeah, I think.
Or Uncharted. I'm curious to see how that's going to turn out.
I'm curious. I have my own feels about that, but that's a whole different podcast. I think God of War would be a great TV show.
Yeah, just
even
don't
though
based on
you're,
the games. Have their own thing with it. Have their own spin on
you
it.
can go into how and why Kratos turned out in a whole different reality, region, dimension, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
Ghost of Tsushima would be amazing. That was an amazing cinematic story, amazing game. It would be so awesome. I would say Dragon Age because I'm biased. I love the Dragon Age story, and I love Sword and Shield stories. And
Yeah, but we got Game of Thrones. It's already been done a million
but
times.
but Game of Thrones was
Has
all
dragons.
just dialogue, and the action scenes were so bad. That's why when The Witcher came out, I was like, yes, give me more of Henry Cavill
But
chopping people's heads off.
wait till Highlander, where the action scenes are great and the dialogue is so
Where
bad.
in Highlander, where you can only kill an immortal by chopping off their head, oh yeah, it's about to be on point. I'm ready.
Did you watch the series with Adrian Paul?
Nah. I haven't seen
have
it.
to.
I haven't seen anything Highlander. I know the story of Highlander. I haven't
You
watched
have to
anything.
watch it before you. All right, because do me a favor. Your next thing, watch all the Highlander shows.
How many shows
telling
are
you.
there?
There's only like 4 or 5 seasons, I think. 6. But the thing is like you know how the '90s are. You know what I mean? They're quick, bang, bang, bang. You know what I
True.
mean? So,
True. They're like 20-minute episodes.
yeah, and
Most of
Adrian
it is
Paul is
recap.
so good as Duncan the Cloud. Like, come on, man. You know what I mean?
It's crazy because I haven't seen anything Highlander, but I know about Highlander because people just talk about it so much, and I've always been like, yeah, I'm gonna see it one day. And now that we have so much streaming and so much access, that I probably can watch it. And you know they're
Anytime.
going to drop the stuff before the new stuff comes out.
I don't know a single person in my age group that's seen Highlander. I look at it and everyone's like, "That's something my parents watched." I'm like, I feel awful hearing that. But
Highlander is definitely something I would have watched, but I just never had access to as a kid. I definitely would have watched it. I love all Sword and Shield stuff. I mean, you're talking to a guy who watched all the OG Hercules shows
Oh yeah,
with
I remember
Kevin
that show.
Sorbo. I even watched
Yeah.
Young Hercules
Dude.
with Ryan Gosling,
Dude,
like
what?
religiously. Yes, I even watched the Young Indiana show and everything, Indiana Jones show. Yeah, I like all that type of stuff, man. I watched all that. I didn't watch Xena,
Cena,
but
I watched Cena. Yeah.
but I watched
Yeah.
the Kevin Sorbo show, the Hercules show. That was my stuff right there.
Dungeons and Dragons. I don't know. It just seems not Dungeons and Dragons. Well, they're doing a thing on that too, aren't they? Isn't that's a show?
I thought I heard
or-
of something. I thought I heard of something.
No.
Oh, you're talking about the
Dragon Age.
cartoon, right?
No,
Dungeons and
no,
Dragons?
it's something else. Like I thought it was gonna be like a live action. I thought
I don't know.
the Dragon Age. I feel like that's just we've been through this. Like we're at a point now where sci-fi is like the head genre. You know what I mean? Like Blade Runner, like that type of stuff. Like that's what people are looking for right now.
It does
You
seem
know?
like it's going in that direction. Before sci-fi was kind of like the niche genre,
Yeah.
and now and before Swords of Shield was the genre. Now it's kind of shifting to the whole sci-fi, which is kind of funny because a lot of studios are like, we need our version of Game of Thrones, but it seems like the public is just like, I want to go to futuristic
look,
stuff.
The government just admitted as much as it's going to that aliens exist. The least they can do is have like a good sci-fi thing. Like, you know what I mean? It's like as soon as I read that report, I was like, this is as indicative of extraterrestrial life as it's going to get that the government's going to admit ever. And so it's in our face, and we have no choice but to come forward with it. You know what I mean? It's like to me when it comes to like government relationships with like aliens, it's like this. it's like when your spouse is figuring out that you're cheating on her, but you want to tell her before she actually has the damning proof. That's what the government's going to do with the aliens. Like the day before
we gotta get ahead of the story, man. we got to put the story out first so we can control it, like Michael Scott.
Exactly. So like the day before, they're like, all right, that's it, we're done. We're going to just land and just have everyone do whatever. That's when it's going to be like, well, you know, those UFOs, those were really like hostile species, and you should prepare yourself. You know what I mean?
Hide the kids, hide the wife, man.
No, you're right, but no, that's where it's going, and it's like now I'm very curious to see what Amazon's going to do with like the Lord of the Rings, because the Lord of the Rings has been adapted into everything now, and you know, it originally a book, it was a video game, so it's done everything. So I'm curious to see what it's going to be with that. You know what I mean?
Especially because Game of Thrones was so popular and it kind of landed the groundwork. And I don't think people realize, if you rewatch Game of Thrones, it's a very flawed show. So, but it was just something that we never really seen before.
Right.
And I think now that that show, as flawed as it was and how popular it became, the blueprint is out. So now people are having their own stuff, and they're like, "Oh, we can make this 100 times better." So I'm very curious to see how Amazon makes their Lord of the Rings.
Right. I think it's going to be entertaining. I think
it's going to be really dope. But yeah, that was it. That was our episode. I hope you had a good time, and be creative, my nomads. Peace.